Ladies and gentlemen, as you have seen in the agenda, we are having 3 panel sessions today and 1 just before we break out. So the next session, the first panel, Understanding How Young Children Think and Learn, today will be moderated by the Director of the Developmental Neuroimaging Team at INSERM. This discussion will explore how young children's brains are organized for learning, emphasizing early skill development and the roles of environment and genetics. So join me in welcoming on stage Dr. Ghislaine Dehn.
Thank you very much. So I will not be alone for this roundtable, so I would like to have with me Liz Pelke from the Psychology Department of Harvard, and Marcela Peña, also from the Psychology Department of University of Santiago, Chile, and Stephanie Mazza from INSPE Lyon, so also the Psychology Department.
And of course, and to encourage a vibrant discussion, let's invite our esteemed experts here on stage with us. Please welcome Vincent Beulane, Director General of Babylou France. I love it. The Babylou people came with their fan club. That's great. Dr. Yufang Ruan, Professor at the College of Education, Zhejiang University, China. And finally, Dr. Patrick Makokoro, President, Naka Foundation, Zimbabwe. So, Ghislaine, the floor is in your safe hands.
Okay, I should take lessons because I do not have this way of announcing my speakers. So I am very happy to be here. So we have learned a lot, and we are all concerned by the fact that we want to improve early childhood education. But what we want to do during this panel is to explain to you the scientific studies that justify in some way your intuition and your daily experience, and to speak about how very young babies think and learn. So, where is my, here, sorry. So, as you know, the brain is growing very fast during the first 1,000 days, and we all came with a real-size brain, just for you to realize that's the brain of a preterm baby. Liz has a brain of a full-term baby, so you see already the difference. Marcela, the brain of a 6-year-old, and Stephanie from an adult. And you see that the big difference are really in the early years, while there is not so much growth during most of the childhood. So it's why it's so important to give to this very intensively developing brain enough to eat. So I will start very basic. Because the brain of a young child consumes 60% of the glucose and 40% of the daily energy requirements. So the brain is a big eater, and you should nourish this brain. Furthermore, it also needs specific vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, and if you do not have them in the meals, you will have long-term effects. So malnutrition during this period, and you know it perfectly, has long-term consequences, but not only malnutrition, but subnutrition. That when you are just near the hunger level, but your brain has not enough. The second very important stuff that you know is that during this period, very important human cognitive abilities develop. And I mean not not only the motor development that everybody knows, but also language development, social cognition, and other skills that Elizabeth will speak about. And they are not visible. But now, thanks to the fact that we have brain imaging, we can see how the early brain is responding to all this environment. So during this panel, we will discuss about how our vision of early development has changed, thanks to all the studies done in the cognitive labs, and also on how intervention can improve early learning and provide a solid foundation for the future. But before to start, I want you to remind you that you have a false belief. You have the impression that you have a brain very unified, but in fact it's not true. For every task you are doing, when you are listening for me, for example, you have a succession of very different brain regions which are activating. For example, here you are listening to me, you will activate your auditory region, and after that you will normalize in the parietal region, understand the meaning of my word in the superior temporal sulcus here. The syntax will be done somewhere else. And I will present, I do not want that to remind all this brain area, but just to show you that when you are just listening to me, you are activating all these different brain areas. And for you to understand what I am saying, you have to have a perfect collaboration between all these brain areas. It's why the architecture of the brain is very crucial for learning, for understanding the world, for loving, for everything you want to do. Everything is in your brain, your emotions are in your brain, your cognitive functions are in your brain, and you need to have all these things working closely together to be efficient and to be what you are. And you can imagine that setting up all this organization is quite a struggle. Not really, in fact, but you need it's quite a complex organ to organize. And the big advantage we have now in our age is that we have all these brain imaging techniques that help us to look what is happening in the brain. And you have some technique like EEG, MEG, we can do even fetal MEG, so look at the fetus listening to outside speech, for example. That's more for the temporal resolution of the brain, how fast a given part of the brain is reacting. Or you have things like MRI, near-infrared spectroscopy, ultrasound, to look which part of the brain is working. And just to give you an idea of how we are working in the lab, here is what we are doing in Neurospin. So we are in the south of Paris. It's baby are coming to see us, and we put on them electrodes, many electrodes, as you can see. So they are a little bit surprised, but you can see that human babies are quite nice, because you cannot do that with a foreign animal, for example. So that's something that you should also know. Humans are very curious, and they're curious at that age. And we present to them, like, for example, here, a man or a woman doing some sound, and what the question was in this experiment was to know whether 3-month-old babies were able to know that when you open the mouth, like, you do a R, and when you do like that, it's more a E, and if they were surprised when the sound was not corresponding to the articulatory movement. And it's how we know that by this surprise effect, that a baby is, what they do already understand about speech, for example. And what do we learn with all these experiments since several decades? Is that we have a brain organization which is present early on and which is shared by everybody. A very specific brain organization, and I will give you some examples. As Professor Ekman says, you just not need the brain, you need to adjust this network to the environment, so you need to exchange with somebody else. You are not learning alone, you learn with others. And so stimulation adjusts the network to the specific property of the environment, for example, when you learn a language, to your own native language. The third message I want you to know is that infants are not passive. From start, they are active learners. They mobilize their attention to learn, to understand something about the world, and their attention is guided by notably the adults, and I am rejoining Professor Ekman's message about the importance of the exchanges. And this guidance is crucial. And all this stimulation and brain organization are not stable. They will modify. It's a virtuous cycle. It's why it's important to act very early on, because you modify the brain, give you more opportunity to learn, you learn more, you modify the brain, etc., etc. Because the brain is a learning machine. So each time you change the input, the brain is changing. So just to give you a few examples, the brain is structured. In every adult, you have a part of the brain which is dedicated to react to faces. On the bottom of the brain, these yellow spots that you see here. In babies, you have exactly the same blue spot. At 6 months old, you have 2 babies here, the group here. And it's really reacting only to faces. When you present body parts, object, landscape, this part of the brain, this yellow spot is not reacting, only to faces. So it's from the start. You have the same organization in the adult brain and in the baby's brain. It's true also for language. Here you have a baby, an adult listening to speech, a 2-month-old listening to speech, exactly the same brain areas. And here you have even 6-month-old babies, preterm babies, listening to syllables. Can you start the video, please? So here, the same syllable is repeated, ba, 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 ba. Here you have a change of phoneme, ba, 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 ga. And you see how strong is the response when you change of phonemes. So at 6 months of gestation, babies are already reacting to speech and discriminating syllables. And here you have a voice change, and it's another region which is responding, also like in adults. My second message, you need exchanges, and that it's again an fMRI experiment in which 2-month-old babies were listening to their mother, in that case, or to another mother, the mother of the previous baby. So it's still a mother, but it's not their mother. And look, the big difference of activation between the response to the 2 voices. You have a strong activation in the language network, when it's the voice of the mother, but you also have activity in the frontal medial, which is the sense of self and familiarity, so already in 2-month-old babies. And when you are listening to the unknown voice, you have more activation in some emotive or emotional brain areas, orbitofrontal and amygdala, which are regions that assign value to the new elements in front of you. So you see how it is important to exchange, and how when a parent or somebody familiar, a caregiver with a child is in exchange, you have a strong activation of this region. So the problem of babies is that they have a lot of things to learn. They have, and how will they know what is important to learn? And again, language is crucial, because what is happening is that this baby is looking to these grapes. The mother sees that the baby is looking to the grapes, and she is just, if she's an attentive mother like that, she will give the name. She will say it's grapes. And why it is important to name stuff? It is important, and we see that it is important already during the first year of life, not when they have already words, but already while they are just a few months old, a few weeks old. It's important because if you name something, it means it's worth learning because you have a name for that. The second important stuff is that it's easier to remember a name, an etiquette, a label, to point to the objects than to remember all the characteristics of grapes. And the third advantage of names is that you can put them in combination with other names and have another representation. For example, you can say, oh, a big grapes, a blue grapes. There is no grapes. If there is a grapes, I will do wine, and so on and so on. So that's the productivity of language. And that is something that babies understand very early on. And as we have said in the previous talk, you have a big difference between the different people and the different kids. Some kids have only a few words. Each dot here is the understanding of one child, and while others are at 600 words. And this diversity is related to the number of exchange between the parents or the caregiver and the child. And that affects the brain. Here you see a beautiful studies by Romeo in which they show that activity in the frontal areas, so part of the linguistic network, are proportional to the number of conversational turns the child and the parents had before. Not only the activation, but also the maturation of this big tract, which is the arcuate fasciculus, that relate the auditory area with the production area. And you see here two examples. This one is bluer than this one, and you see that the number of conversational turns is very different. So you have a direct effect, is what I was saying before, of the input on the brain. And because your brain is more efficient with a better maturation of this tract and more activation, you are better to take information in the world. So it's why you have this very virtuous circle between the parents and the children. And because I have not many times, I will just finish that to enchérir on what Professor Ekman said, exchanges are important. And not only exchanges, but the continuity of the exchange and the contingency between the child and the parents. And so it's why the phones are a terrible invention for child development. Thank you very much.
How am I supposed to do this? This is to advance the slide?
Yes. Oh, I can advance the
there
slide.
it is. Okay, yes. Great. Yes, so first of all, it's a huge honor for me to be here, both to be at UNESCO, but also to be in France, where so much wonderful research on early childhood development has been conducted, and you just heard a beautiful example of it, the work of Ghislaine, which I will be returning to as well. But I want to start out with a general message, which I think it's important to keep in mind when we think about the important challenge of providing supportive learning environments for children, which is that children are inherently highly talented and highly motivated learners. So before they get to school or to preschool, before anybody tries to teach them anything explicitly, they've already learned a great deal of their native language. They've learned a lot about the spatial layout of the environment in their home and their local community. They've learned about an enormous number of different objects, their characteristic forms, their functions, the actions that people perform on them. And they've learned many of the customs and skills that people around them exhibit all the time, but never sit down and explain to the children, this is what I'm doing, and here's why I'm doing it. Now, this knowledge that they're gaining at home will prepare them for school when something very odd is going to happen. When they start primary school, not necessarily in preschools, but primary school, they'll be sitting in an enclosed environment. They'll be exploring the deepest reaches of the world, the cosmos, human history, things that are not happening in real time, and they'll be learning about it from the people around them. And the question then is, how are they able to do this, and how can they be prepared to be able to do this at the time that formal education begins? And today I want to share with you two suggestions that I believe come from research on infants and young children. The first suggestion is that children are able to learn rapidly and efficiently because they don't need to learn everything. They're equipped with core cognitive systems supported by the brain systems that Ghislaine talked about that emerge in infancy and function throughout our lives, supporting our reasoning and our learning. But what's more, infants and children are highly motivated to learn from the people that they care about, the people in their immediate families and in their community. They're motivated to gain the skills that those people have, to speak the language that they speak, and to develop the systems of knowledge that those people exhibit. In particular, infants are predisposed to learn about things in the environment, about places that they can move to and how you get from one place to another. They're motivated to learn about people's actions. When people act on the world, what sorts of things do they do? And they're motivated to learn about people's social relationships to one another. Who are the people that the people in my social world are also engaging with? And finally, they're even motivated to learn about entities in abstract domains like mathematics. And we see evidence for this in infancy. So there are at least 6 systems, I think, of what I call core knowledge in infants that center on distinct abstract concepts. There's a few of them listed here, that solve key cognitive problems that are faced by children and actually by us at all ages, and that continue to function throughout life, guiding our reasoning. To give you a feel for the research that supported this, I want to just talk about 2 findings. Both, I believe, well, at least the first one comes from research done here in Paris. This is a study that was done in a maternity hospital with newborn infants who were presented with sequences of sounds, speech syllables, either 4 sounds per sequence, each one produced for a long period of time, or 12 brief sounds produced per sequence. And then after listening to the sounds for a minute, they were shown simultaneously images of either 4 or 12 objects, and their looking times at those images were compared. The idea being that if the infant is distilling an abstract notion of number from what they're hearing and what they're seeing, then they might do what we would do if we were in a bar or a gym and there were several TV screens around us, but we were only hearing sound from one of them. We would look at the image that corresponds to the sound, and the bars there show that this is what the French newly born infants did, showing that they were representing number in these scenes. Of course, it didn't tell us how this was being done, but recent work by Ghislaine has been shedding important light on this ability, which, by the way, is not an ability that we use only in infancy. The brain regions that support this ability continue to function in children when they learn mathematics in school, and in adults, including mathematicians, professional mathematicians, when they're reasoning about problems in mathematics. They're activating this same system. So evidence then for abstract number representations, which Ghislaine has recently shown, can be made much more precise using functional brain imaging to localize specific signals for the number 12 versus the number 4, the 2 numbers that were used in this earlier behavioral experiment. So what we see from this, I think, is that core knowledge, the knowledge that's propelling children's learning, is capturing abstract properties of the world. And these abstract properties are sufficiently general that they're going to apply in any cultural environment. So a baby could be born anywhere, and they'll be able to pick out the objects in the scene, the significant people, the places that you can move between, and so forth. But these children then can use these abilities to address the primary learning challenge that they face. How do they learn about the particular environment that they happen to have been born into? And here I think the evidence suggests that during infancy, they engage in this cultural learning by focusing on the people in their own social world and learning to do and think about the things those people are doing and thinking about. And this brings me to my second and last experimental finding that I wanted to share with you that focuses on how children start to learn about other people. So this is just briefly as background. As Ghislaine said, newborn infants are highly attentive to faces and to subtle properties of a face, like are the eyes looking at me or are they looking at something else? They're predisposed to imitate other people's communicative gestures conveyed by the face and to turn and look at things that other people are looking at. These findings have been known for a long time. A question is, what do they suggest? Why might infants be doing this? And the suggestion is, these are signs of social engagement. A person looking at me might be engaging with me. a person who is gesturing to me, maybe trying to convey something to me, or show me, or if they look to the side, show me something in the environment. And in general, they're conveying, I'm engaged with you, you're a part of my social world. So here's the experiment that asks, is this actually what's going on in infants' minds in the first year of life? So this is an experiment by Ashley Thomas. It was done during the pandemic with the collaboration of parents who created videos of themselves facing the camera as if speaking to the baby, and then turning and facing to the left and right. And Ashley spliced on images of puppets presented to the left and right, so that what the baby saw was their mother first looking at them and then turning and looking to a puppet who said something and responding to that puppet and then doing the same thing for the other puppet. The critical difference was the mother's response was to imitate one of the two puppets and not imitate the other. And then, after seeing that, babies got to see the two puppets side by side, and the puppets called to the babies by name. And the question was, who does the baby think is trying to engage with me? Who's calling to me now? Do they think it's the the puppet that the parent imitated? So to ask that question, Ashley, actually, I just told you about half of the experiment involving the parent, but each baby was actually participated in 2 sessions, one watching a video of their own parent, the other watching a video of another baby's parent. So you could see, is this just something babies think about people in general, or is there something specific about their own parent that they're going to be learning from? And what she found is that when babies saw their own parent interacting with one of these 2 puppets, they expected that that puppet would know their name. But when they saw another baby's parent imitating that puppet, they did not. So it looks like infants are already, from an early age, using their parents to learn about other people in their social world. Who could be a potential member of my social world, who I should be trusting? Now, this, I believe, has implications for children's learning. As children are learning who's in their social network, they can start to learn from those people. It's not only the parents at home who can teach them, but also other people who are in their social world. Now, when they get to school, if the social world in the school is relevantly similar to the social world at home, and I'll have more to say about that in a later presentation, the idea is that they should be able to learn, they'll be prepared to learn from those people as well, and master the challenges that school presents. On the other hand, for children whose social world differs, then extra steps may need to be taken in order for them to come to see that the material that's being presented in school, even though the teacher may come from a different language background, different cultural background, is relevant to them. And there are ways of inducing that relevance in children through experiments that combine social games where kids are playing with one another with mathematical content and together with the language and symbols of mathematics that school is aiming to be teaching. What this suggests, I think, is that, as Professor Heckman was saying, social motivations and interest and trust in others is beginning in infancy, but it can be fostered in school by building on core knowledge. So let me end with that thought.
Thank you very much. So I will give the floor to our discussant, Noran.
Thank you, and on behalf of the full room of audience, I think I would like to thank you for your great presentations. So I have one question for Jesslyn. So you presented that there is a significant individual differences exist in early childhood development. So I wonder, what guidance do you have, or can you offer to the practitioners, especially the educators and pediatricians, as well as our policymakers, on setting developmental milestones and conducting early risk screenings? And I have another question for Elizabeth. So you mentioned...
Maybe I will answer to the first one.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes, so variability is important and not is important at the same time, because as you have seen, we have all the same brain networks to learn. So even reading, for example, is supported by the same brain areas when you read French or Roman languages or Chinese. So variability is not so important, but it's true that depending on the stimulation you receive, you may have this very huge difference, for example, in vocabulary acquisition. So it's why it's so important to improve, and we heard about the fact that we should give to the parents this knowledge for them to be able to react to that. And there is also the problem that some of these children have difficulties. So even if the parents are doing what they best, they have a brain lesion, or they have malnutrition that have impact on the development of certain brain areas, or they have genetic disease. But in that case, it does not mean that we cannot do anything. In fact, the better we understand this network, we can learn how to bypass the problem and to compensate or remediate to the difficulty. And I think that with more this type of research, we will be more able to cope with this difficult situation. But the brain, I say again, the brain is the learning organ, okay? So with this, you should learn.
Thank you. And I think to learn about the individual differences, the variability existing in early childhood can also ease some of the anxiety that the parents that who are being first parents for the first time. Second question is for Elizabeth. So you mentioned the framework of 6 systems of the core knowledges. So I wonder what recommendations that you have for curriculum development based on this framework. Thank you.
Yes, a couple of things actually. One is, I think, a big problem that surely those of you focused on education in UNESCO face is what principles of learning are going to be the same everywhere, and what is going to vary from one place to another? Where do educational systems need to vary and be tailored to the needs and expectations of children in different places? An interesting thing about the systems of knowledge found in young infants is that these systems don't go away. They aren't scaffolding that you use when you're an infant and then can kick away as you gain more sophisticated concepts. They remain with us throughout our lives. They activate the same brain systems in children and adults that they activate in infants. And we use them tacitly all of the time, even though we're not conscious of the fact that we're using them. We're constantly sorting the world into objects and figuring out who's connected to who and so forth. So these provide, I think, a cognitive common ground that could serve as a basis for developing universal principles for early childhood education that would be implementable worldwide. It doesn't mean that we don't need to pay attention to cultural differences, because of course we do, but there will be a common framework that can be used anywhere. I think that's one thing that's important about this work. But another thing that's important, I think, is the finding that children are already ready to learn and actually extremely capable of learning, even under what look like adverse circumstances. So for example, in some cultures, adults believe that you shouldn't talk to an infant because they can't talk back, so you're just wasting your time by talking to them. But children are learning the language of the people in that culture because those people are talking to each other, and the child is actively tracking this and getting that information. So children are our allies here as we ponder the question of how to serve them better and support their learning.
Thank you so much. That's all from me.
Thank you very much. So now we'll go to Marcela Peña, who will speak about interactive new technology to support early language learning.
Thank you. I would like to, So first I would like to thank UNESCO and Babilu Family Foundation and also Professor Ghislain Dehaene, because they invite me to this round table. The main message that I want to say in my presentation is that we can use interactive technologies as a useful tools to stimulate the development, the linguistic and communicative development of the children, very young children, toddler and preschoolers. This is possible only when we use the interactive technology supervised by adults and in a regulated manner. I'm going to illustrate my result or this statement that I am telling you with some study that we have done in Santiago de Chile. Good. This I cannot see. Yeah. The main problem that we wanted to interactive technology can confront, can contribute to handle, is the speech delay that we observe in the children, in very young children, in preschooler, when they have a lack of high quality stimulation. And this is not because it's not a biological factor that is determining that you are delaying speech development. It's just a lack of opportunity. And it's responsibility of the society that provide this type of high quality stimulation, especially related with language, because language is absolutely dependent on the high quality stimulation. And as my colleague mentioned before, the children, the human children, are born to learn any language that they are exposed to. So this is a seminal study that illustrates why the experience and exposure to speech is very important. This is a study that shows a gap between the children that are born and that grow up in a low socioeconomic level families. And when you compare at the age of 3 years, the children who grow up in the low socioeconomic level, they have here about 30 million of words less than the children that grow up in the high socioeconomic level. So this is just a lack not in the biological or the capacity to learn. It's just a lack of the opportunity. If you less word, you have less opportunity to know what happened. How you can represent with word any concept that you are exposed to. So with this situation, I think this only the relevance of this information is that a crucial factor here is the quality of the stimulation. Maybe the amount of stimulation is also important, but the quality of the stimulation is very crucial. So I would just to show this slide only to tell you that our study are related with have been done in Chile, which is a country that has a lot of people, a lot of children that are growing up in poverty. And I want to tell you that in my country, there are one early childhood educator, for every taking care about 20 toddlers or 20 infants, and also 40 preschoolers. So in this condition, it's very difficult to provide high quality stimulation. And in this context, maybe you can use this type of devices like interactive technology, because they can provide some valuable supporting tools. I'm sorry. Well, our proposal is this: in this context, when we have when we need to warrant in some way provide high quality stimulation, we designed this interactive technology. Technology are very cheaper, they're more cheaper than the human capital to provide the stimulation, and also they are very attractive, and the people from poor or low socioeconomic level and low income countries, you can also find that they can access relatively easily to this type of interactive technology. So we designed this game. This is, I'm not trying to make publicity for this particular game. I'm just telling you that the interactive technology can be used to if they're used in a scientific way, we can use it to promote any type of learning. In this case, we developed this game to stimulate the learning of vocabulary, the development of the vocabulary. And specifically what we do is provide some technology that was inspired, the design was inspired in the previous study, and trying to mimic what is happening in a human interaction, the interaction between a teacher and a learner. And in this sense, the technology can provide contingent response, can provide social cue, can provide immediate evaluation and feedback, and it's quite high playful. It's amazing for this. It's fun for the children to play with this technology. So what we do in this specific game, we train the association between word and visual referent. And basically, briefly, you can see here, I cannot, how can I point with this, but in the first panel, you see that basically the game, I will call the game our intervention. You teach one association of the word with one visual reference in one side of the screen, and then you teach another in the other side of the screen, and then immediately you ask to the child to match with which visual reference is correspond a particular word of the two previously taught. And finally, you provide a feedback, you evaluate if it is correct or not the response, and then you, in the case of preschooler, you also ask to the preschooler to vocalize the word that we have just taught. We did two experiments or two studies with about 400 children, 200 children in each, and I want to show you, I hope this will work, a video of the second study. I don't know if you can play my, thank you. This is the translation in English.
Esa abeja sube. Toca la abeja que sube. ¡Bravo! Oh, y esa abeja baja. Toca la abeja que baja. ¡Qué bien! No veo. Toca la abeja que baja. Toca la abeja que baja. ¡Qué bien! Dime, ¿qué hace esta abeja?
La abeja sube. La abeja sube.
So basically, this is the video, and we have, if you want, we wanted to imitate what is happening in basically real condition, and the children they are learning to provide. In this case, they are trying to. We were testing the verb up and down, you know, and they have to distinguish. And in this case, he is a preschooler, so she can also speak. So these are our two studies. The children participate in 8 sessions of 50 minutes long each one. Sorry, I don't know how to. Maybe this will work. Voila. And in order to evaluate if the intervention really works, we prepare these studies, both studies, and we have evaluation pre and post, the pre-intervention evaluation and the post, and we compare how much they gain in a group of children who play the game and another group of children that was the control that didn't play in this period. I'm sorry, but I don't know how to use this. So our hypothesis was that effectively the people who will play will have more greater gain. So what we found in younger children, we evaluated 2 groups of children, 2 years to 3 years, and 3 years, toddler and preschoolers basically, and we found that in both studies, the group that was experimental, the group that was playing, get more gain, more higher gain in when we evaluated the linguistic ability with a standardized test like ISQ, inventory of communicative abilities, Bailey test, and you can see here the children from the experimental group that in green color. So we found also in preschooler that in another type of evaluation, we evaluated the speech therapists evaluate the children, and we have also the gain in both studies. The green get more gain in speech comprehension than the control group. So moreover, we also evaluate the vocalization, and we discovered this was not an objective of our study, but we found that the children encouraged to speak, especially in preschoolers. So we have this, I would like to, I don't know if I have time, to show this video about, this is an example of one child who participated in a session. I don't know if we can, maybe I can play that. No. Well, okay, but you can see that in the first session, the children here, oh, maybe it's on, but you cannot hear. Oh, wait, in the first session, in the second session, he says just one word.
Limpia.
Again, one word, and then
y no como espinando a la mujer con el árbol, porque el árbol me gusta el niño. Muchos círculos coloridos, muchos círculos coloridos.
So basically what we found is that you can see that the children at the beginning, they just repeat, you have to call for I don't know, a dog, and they say dog, but finally they start to be more generative, more productive. They use the word to produce new sentence and new, even to play with the language. So we also take the advantage of this recording to model whether the vocalization that the children do, the preschooler do, can identify if you are if you correspond to a group of children who have delayed speech, or you are having an typical or non-typical development of speech. So this is, I will finish now with the conclusion, and I think the interactive technology can be used if we use it in a scientific-based manner to stimulate, in this case, speech, but you can use it for other type of stimulation, like socio-emotional or other ability that we believe that we need to support with this technology. And finally, I would like to just say that we have a lot of job, and I think the research in the field is very few, and we anticipate that in future, except that we have a terrible catastrophe, we will have a world where there will be plenty of interactive technologies. So we cannot avoid to this reality, and in some sense we have to adapt and try to be very responsible in the way that we apply this type of technology to the education in early childhood. Well, this is the people who work with our study. Thank you so much.
Donna, Stéphanie. Thank you, Marcela. We will have Professor Makokoro to discuss what you just said.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. Yeah, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and virtual reality, for example, are innovations that are making inroads within the EC space. And as you were speaking, and as all of the profs were speaking, I just couldn't help but jot so many questions, because it's so interesting and fascinating to learn from you. Now, with this advancement in technology, how do we ensure that the interactive technologies used in early education provide high-quality language stimulation, and what criteria should be established for evaluating their effectiveness?
Hello? Yeah. Well, I think high quality stimulation is related to the fact that the stimulation whatever you provide, it should be contingent with what the children is doing. For instance, the contingency is very important. The social cue here, in this game in particular, there a real person who is guiding the game implemented in the tablet, you know, and you need to do visual contact, you need to do mothers, for instance, speak in a way that we speak clearly to young children, and also in the same way that you can correct, not with a sort of punishment, because you just need to say, okay, in case that you didn't respond correctly, you can give the opportunity that you are sure that you can learn later. So the high quality, I think it just has to imitate what the human interaction do. We consider what is high quality.
Great, thank you. And I'll just throw in an additional question. On my way here, I got a text from a family friend, and they were asking me about how, you know, my wife and I regulate the use of technology for our young kids in our home. And you ended with sort of a disclaimer in terms of, you know, being careful about how we use. So based on your research and the work that you've done, what could be perhaps a good practice that you'd recommend for parents, caregivers, and educators to effectively supervise the use of these technologies?
Well, I think there are we need more research about that. I'm pretty sure that we need that from different disciplines. We really produce regulation, because now there are not regulation at all. But what we use specifically with this game is that you play twice a week, so 15 minutes today and 15 minutes 3 days later. And the children don't have any problem. You say you cannot use tomorrow because it's not your time, and they say, okay, I will someday in the future, I will. They really can learn about what is you don't need to worry. If you play more, you learn more. This doesn't mean that. So I think if we can regulate the amount of exposure to this type of technology, and whether you mix this type of playing with the other play that they do, with 3D, you know, exploring the nature, or just speaking with in group, or learning with the pairs, with the other children, I think it would be very important. So I think for the moment I can just suggest that the exposure should be minimal, and also no random, because there are a lot of commercial game, hundreds, thousands, something, and the stimulation is just random, it's just for fun. I think this can really have. Maybe we don't know, because they are not experimentally validated, but this could be dangerous for the development of executive function or attentional control.
Thank you, Prof. Prof. Elizabeth?
Could I jump in?
Sure.
I would love to see more creative thinking about how to harness digital technologies in ways that will play to children's strengths as learners. And one thing that's clear about children's learning, we've heard it from multiple talks today, is that children are social learners, and they learn especially well in social contexts from the people around them. An interesting experiment was conducted recently in Uruguay, not far from where Marcela is in Chile, in which they experimented with a digital device that, instead of interacting just one-on-one with a single child, interacted with a group of 4 children. And it provided adapted feedback on children's performance, but at the level of the group, not the individual. So each of 4 children is solving 4 different problems, and at the end, the machine comes back and either says, all 4 were solved correctly, or there was at least one mistake made, discuss and try again, right? Prompting the children to interact with each other around the digital feedback. And that was actually found, it was a set of math tasks that they were doing to have a stronger effect on children's math learning than just playing with a single digital device. I don't think we should think about these devices as the province of the people who are creating them, right, the technologists that are creating them, that it could be really interesting to think more creatively from the perspective of children's learning about what kinds of devices should we be aiming for and encouraging children to use.
Can I say something very short? That this could be useful also, as Liz said, we have preschooler working with immigrants, the children who doesn't speak the Spanish in Chile. And when they play in group, it's very easy to prompt them to dare to speak Spanish in a way. So this is completely true that the social playing is more interesting and more productive.
Well, thank you. I did say that I have a ton of questions, but I also wanted to say to you, Prof. Gillet.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe we will come back, I think, either during the general discussion or also this afternoon on the problem of this technique, because I think it's very important in our world. So now Stephanie Mazza will speak about sleep. And I give you the floor, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here and talk about sleep. I hope that you are not too sleepy. And I know that there is a special word to use in this Congress to wake up the audience. It's the word Babylou. So I don't know if there is young parents in the room, but I think that if we have a look at this picture, the parents will be happy to have a child sleeping like this. But the reality is quite different, because sleep problems are one of the most common concerns of parents, and it's occurring approximately 20 to 30% of young children. So sleep issues during childhood tend to persist and lead to long-term negative consequences, cognitive, behavioral deficit, psychiatric, health outcome. I think that you all know the link between sleep deprivation and obesity and metabolic disorders, and sleep deprivation also reduced family well-being. So to prevent and to manage sleep problems, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends to give to parents and caregivers some knowledge about good practice to promote sleep hygiene. But by this way, this requires to know and to understand what is sleep regulation, what is optimal sleep recommendation, and also all the factors that influence sleep. So at first, I would like to remind you that sleep is a developmental process, and there is a lot of changes before the age of 6. Before the age of 3 months, as you can see on the graph, babies sleep for an average of 14 to 17 years per day, and their their rhythm is 3 to 4 consecutive hours of sleep, broken by shorter period of wakefulness for feeding, diapers changing, and also social interaction. And at this age, there is no distinction between day and night. So the sleep cycle is composed about 2 stages. The first one is the active stage. The baby falls asleep in an active stage of sleep, and I will show you a video in a few minutes. And in this active sleep, the baby moves a lot, makes a lot of noises, and expresses facial emotion. After that, there is a quiet sleep in which baby is relaxed, calm, very deeply sleeping. In French, we say dormir à point fermé. And the cycle is about 50 minutes. And by the way, in a sleep period, there is 3 cycles interrupted by a brief awakening. Between the age of 6 and 1 year, the sleep needs drop to 12 to 15 hours, and the late afternoon nap disappear at this time. The sleep is consolidating during the night, and we say that babies start to sleep through the night, but we know that there is some exception for the rule. Between the age of 1 and 3 years, the sleep needs are approximately 11 to 14 hours. The sleep organization is now like the one of the adults. The children fall asleep in a light sleep, no more active sleep, followed by a deep sleep, called also slow wave sleep, and after that, the REM sleep. The cycle duration increases. It's about 90 minutes at this age. The morning nap will disappear around 18 months, and 90% of the children at this age have a nap in the early afternoon. This last nap will progressively disappear before the age of 6, and at 3 years, between 3 and 6, the sleep is mainly during the night. So I want to convince you that sleep is it's not just a period of rest. There is a lot of things during the sleep, and sleep, there is a huge quantity of research making the link between sleep stages and brain maturation. I don't know if I can replay the video. This is an active sleep. You can see here a baby sleeping in this stage, and you have here a little rat sleeping on his back. And the research want to find why the children sleep in this active stage, because this active stage is the more dominant sleep stage at this age. And you look, there is a lot of twitches and jerk, and at the first sight, we can think that these movements are random, but this is not the case. The research shows that they are actually very organized and purposeful. This movement comes from the spontaneous brain activation during this sleep stage, and it's stimulating the sensory motor system, which is involved in moving and sensing the world. So during this sleep stage, the children practice. This is a practice session for the brain. So parents and caregivers often rock the baby or talk to the baby when they see this movement, and it's very important to know that the children is sleeping. And if we wake up the children, we might interrupt this process. At 1 year, this active state no more exists, and there is atonia, and the REM sleep is now occurring at the end of the cycle. And this REM sleep is rapid eye movement, because we have just movement behind the eyelids. This REM sleep is also very important because it's important for emotional regulation, but also for dreaming. Regarding now the quiet sleep, or the deep slow wave sleep, during this stage, the brain does some important housekeeping. Slow wave activity helps to clear away the waste that is produced by the brain when we are awake. So these waste products include substances that induce sleep. It explains why the more we stay awake, the more we feel sleepy, and the more we need to clean. So the depth of sleep is related to the duration of the preceding awakening period. So children need to sleep to be awake and to learn, but they also need to stay awake and learn to sleep. So there is a lot of study. We show the link between sleep and brain development. So slow wave sleep seems crucial to supporting the brain development. Here it is the study done by Kurz. And as you can see, so this is head with the nose up. As the brain area mature, here in the posterior brain area when the children is young and after in the frontal lobe during the adolescence, there is a corresponding increase in slow wave activity during the sleep, represented in red on this graph. So slow wave sleeps helps the brain maturation and helps to maintain efficiency and prepare to new learning. And there is two processes. The first one is by reducing synaptic strains in certain brain network, and the second one is to reactivate other network to enhance them. So it's like if you are cleaning up your garden during sleep, you keep the important and strong connection, and you cut the weaker and the non-useful one. So we think that the crucial role of sleep is to sustain learning. And there is a lot of study who show that naps and overnight sleep is very important to facilitate memory consolidation and generalization in infant children, but also in adults. I'll show you some example of this study, just a moment. They use the same methods. Children perform a learning session. It could be spatial location learning, it could be new vocabulary or grammatical syntax. They perform the learning session in the morning, and after that, half of the group have a nap period, and the other ones stay awake. And after that, we make a recall session after this period and 24 hours after. And the results are very strong. As you can see, the two groups have similar performances at the beginning of the study, but you can see that in black, the children who have a nap maintain their learning performance, while the children who stay awake show a substantial forgetting rate. And 24 hours, the differences is quite the same. So sleep is it's not just a period of rest. This is an active step in which newly encoded memories is replayed in the hippocampus and sent to the cortical area to be stored and to be strengthened for the use later. So as I said at the beginning of my talk, healthy sleep patterns can be established and sleep problems can be prevented if we promote a good sleep practices. So I just want you to talk about four main practices that improve sleep. The first one comes from the fact that the human circadian clock has to be synchronized during the childhood. And the most effective method to do this is to give strong light and darkness signal. For that, we have to provide darkness during the overnight by reducing screen use in the evening, and to provide natural light during the naps. Because by this way, the children will find a difference between nap during the day and nap during the night. We also use cues in the external environment to train this human circadian clock, and we use consistent timing for daily activity, outdoor activity, lunchtime, bath, but I know that Mr. Bulan will talk about some practice in Babylou Crèche. Another good practice is to train the ability to self-soothe. Why? Because there is a lot of research showing that the infant ability to settle to sleep on their own appears to be a key practice to have an healthy sleep pattern. It's perfectly normal for children, but also for adults, to wake up during the night. But we have to learn how to get back to sleep by how own. And by the way, if you put the baby to bed drowsy, but not sleepy, they are more likely to become self-soother. They will wake up as frequently as other children, but they will fall back to sleep easier. as I said, children need to sleep to stay awake, and they need to stay awake to fall asleep. And I think that in the crèche, you have a lot of discussion with the parent about the impact of the nap during the day on the sleep during the night. And we just finished a research in Lyon showing that when the children need a nap, the nap do not disturb the nighttime sleep. But it's important not to eliminate nap too earlier, but it's also important to have a discussion with the family, because you have seen that the sleep is always in progression, and we have to check that naps are not too long or are not too late in the day, because it could interrupt the sleep. And what we want is to encourage sleep at night. And the last one is the bedtime routine. There is a lot of studies showing that bedtime routine are associated with a good sleep. A bedtime routine includes shorter sleep onset latency, reduced night waking, and increased sleep duration. So I would like to tell you that it's never too late to learn about sleep. And we have developed in Lyon a sleep promoting program for children from the age of 6. This is a program that can be carried out at school, and we have shown that this program significantly improves children's sleep and parents' knowledge. So if you want to learn more about this little turtle, you can download the program on this website. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Stéphanie. Now, Vincent Bulan will discuss sleep and how to practice sleep in crèche.
Merci beaucoup. Merci Stéphanie d'avoir aussi clairement expliqué l'importance du sommeil, et notamment chez le plus jeune. Chez Babylou, on l'a compris aussi, et les professionnels le comprennent, mais je vais vous expliquer quelques projets qu'on a mis en place dans certaines de nos structures, dans la majorité des crèches, mais aussi certaines problématiques auxquelles on est confronté, et peut-être dans l'échange essayer de trouver les bons mots et pour essayer de faire savoir justement ce savoir-faire et l'importance du sommeil dans nos pratiques. Le sommeil à disposition en libre choix chez Babylou est quelque chose d'important, et j'ai bien aimé ton approche de dire le sommeil c'est pas le reste de quelque chose, c'est un tout et ça fait partie vraiment de l'ensemble. Et ça on l'a compris, donc dans les pratiques, se dire que le coucher échelonné ou le réveil échelonné, parce qu'il y a un moment, un enfant qui reste trop dans son lit, qui n'a plus besoin de sommeil, n'est pas bon pour lui. Ça, c'est des pratiques que l'on met en place. Mais là, on va s'opposer à des normes. C'est-à-dire que, concrètement, en crèche, il y a certaines tutelles, donc c'est la PMI chez nous, qui va nous dire maintenant, il faut des lits à barreaux. Mais quand on met des lits à barreaux, l'enfant ne peut pas aller se coucher tout seul et il ne peut pas se lever tout seul. Et donc nous, on essaie de promouvoir, en tout cas dans nos structures, et c'est un travail de longue haleine avec les régulateurs, de dire il faut des lits bas, sans tour, pour que l'enfant puisse, en autonomie, aller se coucher. Et donc moi, j'ai une question. Comment la science pourrait nous aider à convaincre la régulation, la PMI, à dire non, il ne faut pas de lit à barreaux. Il faut des lits où l'enfant puisse aller se coucher, parce que le sommeil est tellement important pour le développement du cerveau et pour tout le reste, pour sa santé.
Merci pour la question. En fait, c'est des pratiques qui sont extrêmement intéressantes parce que quelque part, on va chercher à développer l'autonomie de l'enfant par rapport à la régulation de son rythme. Par contre, il faut savoir qu'il y a très peu de recherches scientifiques qui sont faites sur le terrain pour pouvoir donner quelque part du crédit ou au contraire discréditer ce genre de pratiques. Donc, je n'ai pas de données probantes pour dire il faut supprimer le lit à barreaux. On sait que chez les tout-petits, c'est quelque chose qui est sécuritaire d'avoir ce lit à barreaux. Mais en tout cas, il y a des choses qui vont dans le sens de ce qu'on observe dans la littérature scientifique. C'est qu'effectivement, un enfant, à partir du moment où il est capable de percevoir lui-même ses signes de fatigue, il va être capable de témoigner de son envie d'aller se coucher. Puis généralement, on ne loupe pas ce moment-là, parce qu'on sait que chez un enfant, si on le couche trop tard par rapport à ces signes-là, il va devenir hyperactif et que cette hyperactivité va encore plus retarder la survenue de la sieste. Donc, je pense que c'est des très bonnes pratiques, mais elles nécessitent vraiment d'avoir un personnel qui est extrêmement bien formé sur les besoins de l'enfant, qui soit disponible, donc suffisamment nombreux pour pouvoir regarder les enfants, puis essayer de détecter chez chacun d'entre eux quand est-ce que c'est le moment d'aller se coucher pour leur apprendre cette autonomie, parce qu'ils ne vont pas arriver autonomes à Babylou, ça va de soi. Et l'autre chose, c'est aussi que ces personnes-là aient les connaissances suffisantes pour savoir qu'il ne faut pas non plus que l'enfant fasse parfaitement ce qu'il veut par rapport au sommeil, puisque justement cette sensation d'avoir besoin de dormir, elle se développe avec l'âge, et donc de ne pas complètement retarder certaines siestes, puisque comme je vous l'ai dit, ça pourrait avoir un impact sur le sommeil de la nuit. Donc c'est à la fois travailler sur cette autonomie, être capable de la voir et individualiser quelque part ce besoin, mais aussi avoir des garde-fous très forts pour être sûr qu'il n'y ait pas une dérive complète du sommeil de jour par rapport au sommeil de nuit.
Merci beaucoup. Une autre expérience que je voulais vous partager au sein de la Babylou Family, c'est le sommeil en extérieur. On développe un programme d'éducation durable, de Sustainable Education, on en a parlé en anglais, et on essaye de promouvoir l'ancrage à la nature de l'enfant au maximum et de lui proposer le plus de moments en contact avec la nature. Et quand on voit le besoin en sommeil des enfants, c'est assez naturel, vu la quantité de sommeil dont il a besoin, de pouvoir lui proposer en tout cas un sommeil en extérieur. Et ça vient d'une pratique nordique, hein. Les Finlandais sont assez forts dans ça et démarrent très tôt, encore une fois, dès l'âge de 3 mois. Et on le met en place, par exemple, aux Pays-Bas, en Belgique, en France aussi, quand les conditions, encore une fois, le sont. Et on est encore parfois opposé à des normes aussi de qualité de l'air, notamment, et de conditions favorables, et aussi de crainte, parfois, des parents, mais aussi de la régulation par rapport à la sécurité que l'on mettrait en place en proposant ce sommeil en extérieur. D'ailleurs, c'est assez flagrant. Si on part de la Finlande, il démarre à peu près le sommeil en extérieur vers l'âge de 3 mois. Et plus on descend, je crois que aux Pays-Bas, ils vont démarrer, et en Belgique vers 6 mois, 1 an. Et en France, on commence à s'autoriser ou à avoir de la possibilité de le faire à partir de 18 mois. Pour donner un peu les encore. Et on s'aperçoit de tous les bienfaits du sommeil à l'extérieur, notamment sur la quantité de sommeil, la qualité de l'endormissement, et peut-être aussi pour les enfants qui ont du mal à s'endormir, de leur proposer quelque chose d'éveil auprès de la nature. Ma question, elle est simple. On améliore la qualité de sommeil et la quantité de sommeil de jour. Pour nos professionnels, en quelques mots simples, comment on rassure les parents qu'un enfant qui dort trop bien à la crèche, il ne va pas mal dormir à la maison le soir?
Alors, hélas, je ne vais pas confirmer tout à fait ça, pour 2 raisons. Parce qu'en fait, la pratique de la sieste à l'extérieur dans les pays scandinaves, il faut savoir qu'il y a un seul article scientifique à ce sujet-là, il n'y en a pas d'autres. Et cet article-là n'a pas mesuré véritablement la quantité de sommeil. Et je pense qu'il y a quelque chose qui est extrêmement important à différencier, c'est combien de temps l'enfant dort et quelle est la qualité de son sommeil quand il dort. Parce qu'en fait, ils peuvent dormir une sieste d'1h30 et de ne pas faire de sommeil profond tel que je vous l'ai montré là. Et à ce compte-là, la sieste, elle n'a pas le même effet. Donc je pense que avant de véritablement trouver des arguments scientifiques, puisque c'est en tant que scientifique que j'ai été invitée ici, il faut faire des recherches pour essayer de s'assurer qu'effectivement la sieste en extérieur permet un sommeil qui soit de plus grande qualité. Parce que logiquement, si la sieste en extérieur permet un sommeil plus profond, elle devrait permettre des siestes plus courtes. Donc si les enfants dorment plus longtemps à l'extérieur, moi je ne suis pas capable de vous dire que c'est parce qu'ils sont bien et qu'ils dorment bien, ou de vous dire c'est peut-être parce que le sommeil n'a pas pu s'approfondir. Mais encore une fois, ce n'est pas parce qu'il n'y a pas de résultats scientifiques qu'il faut dire que c'est quelque chose qui ne marche pas, c'est simplement de dire que moi, je n'ai pas la matière pour répondre à cette question-là, mais en tout cas, ça vaut le coup d'être testé. Et je redis juste une chose, il y a quelque chose d'extrêmement important pour le sommeil de l'enfant, c'est les conditions de couchage. Donc si l'enfant fait la sieste en extérieur, et c'est une des choses dont on parle beaucoup quand les enfants font la sieste en extérieur, c'est qu'ils ne doivent pas faire leur sieste dans la poussette ou dans le siège auto, mais qu'il faut les conditions, comme vous l'aviez dit tout à l'heure, d'un sommeil allongé sur le dos, sur une surface rigide, etc.
Un grand merci. Et les crèches Babylou te sont ouvertes si tu veux mener une enquête sur le sommeil.
On peut commencer une enquête.
Merci. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am sorry we are obliged to go fast because we wanted to go through many questions and we could have spent all the day on either the new technology or sleep or brain imaging and so on. But maybe after that we will discuss with our host. So the last presentation will be on parent education. So how, by Liz again, how, when you help the parents, some things that we have already a little bit discussed with Professor Ekman, in fact, to improve also the second generation. Liz?
Thanks, Ghislaine. This will be shorter and a change of pace. We've been focused until now on what can we do directly to foster the well-being and learning of young children. I just want to end by telling you briefly about a very recent set of findings from a study asking what can we do to support the parents of children and foster their development in a way that will have benefits for the next generation. And I realize I need the slide thing. Oh, here it is. No, got it. Okay, so this will be fast. Let me give you the background. The background for this study is an experiment that I had nothing to do with and didn't even know of its existence when it was initiated 15 years ago. It's called the Ghana Youth Study. It took place in Ghana. And it was initiated for a reason unrelated to children's development, to assess the economic costs and benefits of making secondary education free. At that time in Ghana, secondary education was expensive to go to high school. You had to, of course, pass middle school. You had to pass a national exam as well. But you also needed to pay, your family needed to pay quite a large fee, about 1/5 of an adult's salary for an entire year, to send one child to high school. And the question was, is this a good thing? Because it frees up money for other parts of the education budget. High school is expensive, and some people can afford to pay, or a bad thing because not everybody can afford to pay. So to address that question, in this study, they focused on 2,000 plus people who had passed through junior high school, taken and passed the qualifying exam to go to high school, but had not enrolled by the deadline. And in the overwhelming majority of cases, the reason for not enrolling was that the family could not afford to pay the school fees. So 1/3 of the boys and girls in this sample were randomized to get scholarships, which were paid directly to the high school for their benefit, so that for them, there was no added expense to going to high school, in the hopes that many of the students would take advantage of this scholarship and enroll in high school at that point. And in fact, there was an effect of getting the scholarship on the amount of education that the boys and girls who won the lottery, as it were, and got this scholarship had. At the end, they had something like 2 years more high school education than the remaining kids from this sample who hadn't gotten the subsidy. And they were also, the girls at least, were more likely to, after high school, to go on and to tertiary education, university, or some technical school. Finally, there was an effect, and this was one of the things that the investigators were looking to see, if they would find it. There was an effect of getting the subsidy on girls' decisions about when to have their first child. Okay, so the future mothers of girls chose to have their first child later in their own lives than the future mother who got the scholarship relative to those who did not, showing that because the assignment to get the scholarship or not was random, showing that this is a causal impact of education on decisions about when to have your children. Will you wait until you are financially independent and economically more secure? Well, at this point, the investigators wondered, will parent education also have a causal impact on children, the future children of these participants in this first experiment? And that's where they came to me, and we developed a set of measures that could be used to address that question. So this is the Ghana Child and Caregiver Panel Survey. The participants are about 1,900 children born to the parents who had previously been, who were in the original study. Because they were being born at different times later for the ones who got the scholarship, we chose specific time windows at which to test the children and sent surveyors out to conduct tests of their cognitive abilities in 5 different domains: language and numerical cognition and spatial cognition, social cognition, and executive functions, which you heard about earlier today. So they went out into the field and did these assessments on children. And while they were out in the field, they also did systematic measurements of aspects of the children's home, detailed interviews with the parents, and so forth. Now, the first finding of this study has nothing to do with any of the cognitive measures that I developed. It came simply from interviews with parents tracking childhood survival. And what they found was that mortality rates for children from birth to 3 years are quite high in Ghana, about 5%. But they found that this was strongly impacted by mothers' education. Those who were offered the scholarships had children who were more likely to be alive at age 3 than those who did not get the scholarships. There was no effect for the children of boys who got scholarships, but almost all of the children that we tested in this study, the primary caregiver was female, usually the mother. And for those kids, there was a substantial effect on child survival. But turning to the cognitive abilities, for the children of the fathers, again, we have a smaller sample size and higher variability and no positive treatment effects, so I'm just going to be talking about the 50% of the kids from that original study who were girls and subsequently had children. Now, for those kids, there were some interesting findings. First of all, although we were measuring kids at age 1 and 3, the ages that would be most relevant to this group here, we did not see an impact of parent education at those ages. But we did see it at age 5, which is when most of the kids started kindergarten, and at age 7 when they were in primary school. What's more, so it looks like the treatment effects are beginning when the kids start school. What's more, if we break it down by the different cognitive abilities, what we see is effects of mothers' education on language and literacy, learning to read, on numerical cognition and learning math, arithmetic in school, and also on spatial cognition and executive function, both of which are critically exercised during school activities. On the other hand, social cognition, there was no effect of parent education on kids' intuitive reasoning about other people's mental states or relationships to one another, emotions, and so forth. So it looks like the strongest effects are on skills that were exercised in school. Now, there was one effect of mother's education on the youngest children, however, and this came not from any cognitive tests that we had devised, but from day-long recordings that were made of the language that the children were producing and also hearing from the people around them. It turned out that the kids who had the mothers who had been offered the subsidy had more conversational turn-taking per minute and higher levels of vocalization themselves, when assessed at 1 and 2 years of age. So it looks like early language experience may be boosting children's learning at later ages when they get to school, a place where, as I had said earlier, virtually everything that children learn is conveyed to them directly or indirectly through language, not through direct experience and interaction with the larger world beyond the walls of the school. Now, what were the pathways that might have influenced the effects of mothers, more educated mothers, on their children? A couple of things were suggested by the survey data that was collected on parents, asking them, do you engage in activities like counting things in front of your child or reading to your child and so forth? Not all of these showed differences, but counting did and playing with the child did. The mothers who were more educated were more likely to report doing those things. And singing to children as well was found to be more likely for the mothers who had more education. And it raises the question, why are the children of treated mothers ahead? And why are they only ahead in school-relevant skills at the time that schooling begins? Now, the honest answer to this question is we don't know. These randomized experiments are wonderful at getting at causality, but if you want to go beyond that and ask, why do we see this causal effect and not some other effect, they're not very good at telling us that. I also need to give you two caveats. It's entirely possible that the reason we see effects at the later ages but not the earlier ones is not because there are no effects at the earlier ages, but simply because our cognitive measures weren't good at picking them up. It's also possible that because the children at the earlier ages were more likely to be alive if their mother had more education, they also may have been equally likely to get ill but be in recovery, in which case they may have been less in less good shape to actually take the cognitive tests that we were giving to them. So there may be utterly extrinsic reasons why we're not seeing the effects more strongly at the early ages. But I want to end with two suggestions, which I think have a chance of being right and are consistent with all of these findings. Because the children of treated mothers were talked to and sung to and played with more, these early forms of interaction may be preparing kids for learning, the kind of learning environment you get when you go to school, where virtually everything that you're learning is coming directly or indirectly from the speech of the people around you, from the teacher, from books, and so forth. But there's a second, I think, factor that may be at play here, which is that the mothers who were offered the scholarships and who many of whom took up that offer and gained more education would have been more similar in their level of education and their culture to the teachers than would the mothers whose education had ended earlier. And it may well be that along with that similarity in education will be similarity in ways of speaking, ways of interacting with the children in a classroom that lead children who have better educated primary caregivers to feel more at home in that classroom and more trusting of the teacher and the lessons that the teacher's providing. If that's true, then I think it suggests that something about the potential causes of worldwide learning gaps between children growing up in low-resource communities and children growing up in more advantaged communities. That these gaps may be narrowed first of all, by increasing access to education not only for children but for their parents as well. But second, that these gaps may be remedied by attacking the social side of children's experiences in school, as well as the cognitive side, as Professor Heckman had suggested earlier today. Thank you.
So we are running late. I am sorry for that. There is plenty of interesting facts that you get today, except if you have a burning question for maybe we should go to the conclusion. Okay. Okay, so I just want to give you the conclusion slides, which is exactly what you have heard from start. So, and that we have repeatedly shown to you in Professor Ekman's presentation, but also in all our presentation. First, you need to meet the nutritional needs of children's brain and sleep, as you have seen with Stephanie. And it's very important because sleep is part of learning. Definitely, we have plenty of evidence, and Stephanie showed it. So sleep is important. You should foster cognitive growth in a caring environment. As you have seen, it's not only to be attached to the child. Everybody is some way attached to a child. You need to have this exchange. You need to listen to the child. You need to respond to the child. And you should empower parents. Parents have, in fact, natural abilities to take care of their children, but often, especially now, they think they are not good. There are too many advices. They don't know how to do. Maybe they have at least in France, for example, you have many mothers who are alone. They have no families, and they do not know how to react to their children. So we should teach parents. I like the experiment by Professor Ackman in Jamaica and China, showing that if you teach parents, you will improve the children. And Liz show perfectly that even if you invest, and also in Professor Ackman's presentation, if you invest in parents, you will have effect that will go across generations. Support mother education. In every country, the first caregiver are the mothers. Even if we see more and more fathers involved, and I like this idea, but still the reality is that mothers are taking care of the children, and we should help them. And finally, technology will be useful. Technology is useful. It's a support. It cannot replace human care, but within human interaction, technology could be a very good tool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ghislaine. Thank you. Thank you. I will just seize the opportunity for another huge round of applause for all our speakers this morning. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have been wonderful and patient. So we have filled our brains. Now I think it's time to fill our tummies, right? So it's time for a break, time for lunch. We're starting back at 2:30 here. Lunch will take place in Salle Ségur, down the hall, right? And please be here on time, maybe 2 minutes before. Thank you. Enjoy lunch. See you in a bit.